Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
Marla Keaton pressed her palm against the coffee maker as it gurgled to life, watching steam rise in the dim kitchen light. 6:15 in the morning meant another day at the veterinary clinic, another day of surgical gloves and antiseptic smell, another day of earned paychecks that kept her and Lydia afloat in their small rental house outside Asheville. "Mom, can you braid my hair today?" Lydia's voice carried from the hallway, followed by the soft padding of bare feet on hardwood. "Course I can, baby." Marla turned to see her 9-year-old daughter clutching a brush and 2 rubber bands, dark hair falling past her shoulders in waves that caught the morning light. Lydia had inherited her father's thick hair and Marla's stubborn chin. Though thankfully none of his tendency to disappear when things got hard, Marla guided Lydia to the kitchen table and began working her fingers through the tangles. "You excited about Mrs. Patterson's art class today?" She said we're going to learn about perspective, like how things look different depending on where you stand. Lydia sat perfectly still, used to their morning routine after years of practice. Smart girl. That's useful in more ways than one. Marla twisted the braid tight, securing it with the band. "There. Now you look ready to take on the world." Lydia grinned and pressed a quick kiss to Marla's cheek before grabbing her backpack. The school bus would arrive in 10 minutes, giving Marla just enough time to drive to the clinic and prep for the day's surgeries. This was their life. Simple, predictable, stable. Marla had built it piece by piece after Lydia's father walked out when she was 3. No drama, no chaos, just the two of them figuring things out together. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Her phone buzzed against the counter. Mom calling at 6:30 in the morning meant something was wrong, or she wanted something. "Hey, Mom." "Marla, honey, how are you? How's our sweet Lydia?" Claudine Keaton's voice carried that particular tone she used when she wanted to sound caring but had something else on her mind. Marla had learned to recognize it over 36 years of being the daughter who never quite measured up to her siblings' achievements. "We're fine, getting ready for work and school." "That's wonderful, dear. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about this summer, about the beach trip." Marla's grip tightened on the phone. Every July for the past 4 years, her parents took all their grandchildren to Myrtle Beach for a week. Lydia looked forward to it for months, marking days on her calendar and talking about building sandcastles with her cousins. "What about it?" "Well, your father and I have been talking, and we're just not sure we can swing it this year. The house needs new gutters, and the car's been making that noise again. You know how it is." Marla knew her parents had savings. Harold had worked for the Postal Service for 37 years before retiring with a pension. Claudine had never worked outside the home, spending her time volunteering at church and managing her garden club. They owned their house outright and took weekend trips to the mountains every few months. "So no beach trip at all?" "I'm afraid not, sweetheart. We just can't afford it this year. Maybe next summer, when things settle down." Through the kitchen window, Marla watched Lydia wait by the mailbox for the bus, backpack hanging off one shoulder, art supplies poking out of the side pocket. Her daughter had been talking about the beach trip since Easter, drawing pictures of seashells and planning which books to bring. "Okay, I'll tell Lydia. I know she'll be disappointed, but she's such a good girl. She'll understand." "Yeah, she will. We love you both, you know that." "I know, Mom." The call ended just as the school bus pulled up. Marla waved to Lydia through the window, forcing a smile as her daughter climbed the steps and found a seat near the front. The bus pulled away, leaving Marla alone with the news she'd have to deliver later. She grabbed her keys and headed for the door. Telling Lydia would have to wait until after work. Maybe by then she'd figure out how to explain that sometimes families make choices that don't make sense, and sometimes those choices hurt. The veterinary clinic smelled like bleach, and wet dog, familiar scents that usually calmed Marla's mind. Today they felt sharp, intrusive. She'd spent the morning assisting Dr. Rodriguez with a space surgery and the afternoon cleaning kennels. But her thoughts kept drifting to the conversation with her mother. "You're quiet today." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from his paperwork as Marla finished sanitizing the surgical instruments. "Everything okay at home?" "Family stuff. Nothing serious." He nodded, used to Marla's tendency to keep personal problems to herself. In 3 years of working together, she'd earned his respect by showing up on time, doing her job well, and never bringing drama to the workplace. "If you need to leave early today, we're covered. Mrs. Chen's bringing in her cat at 4, but Jessica can handle that." "Thanks, but I'm fine. I'll finish the day." The truth was, she wasn't ready to go home and face Lydia's disappointment. Better to stay busy, let the routine tasks occupy her hands while her mind worked through the problem. By 5:30, she'd cleaned every kennel twice and organized the supply closet. No more excuses. Time to go home and break her daughter's heart with news that didn't make sense, delivered by people who claimed to love them both. Marla found Lydia at the kitchen table, bent over her homework with the focused concentration she brought to everything she cared about. Math worksheets spread across the surface, pencil marks neat and careful. "How was school, baby?" "Good. Mrs. Patterson said my drawing was really good. She wants to enter it in the school art show." Lydia looked up with bright eyes, pencil still poised over a fraction problem. "That's amazing. I'm proud of you." Marla sat down across from her daughter, trying to find the right words. There weren't any. Sometimes the truth just hurt, and sugarcoating it didn't change anything. "Lydia, I need to tell you something about this summer." Something in her tone made Lydia set down her pencil and give her full attention. "What about this summer?" "Grandma called this morning. They can't take everyone to the beach this year. They have some expenses, repairs to the house." Lydia's face went very still. "No beach trip at all." "Not this year. But I've been counting the days. I made a list of things to pack." "I know, sweetie. I'm sorry." Lydia stared down at her math worksheet, blinking rapidly. Marla recognized the expression from her own childhood, the way you held yourself together when disappointment hit like cold water. "It's okay." Lydia's voice came out small but steady. "Maybe we can go to the lake instead. Just us." "Yeah, we can do that." Lydia picked up her pencil and went back to her fractions, but Marla saw the way her shoulders curved inward, the careful control in every movement. Her daughter was learning to swallow disappointment at 9 years old, accepting that sometimes plans changed for reasons that adults couldn't or wouldn't explain. Something cold settled in Marla's chest as she watched Lydia work. Her parents had delivered the news like it was simple, inevitable. But nothing about their finances suggested they couldn't afford a beach house rental for a week. They'd taken the same trip every summer for years, always at the same place, always with the same enthusiasm for spending time with their grandchildren, all their grandchildren. Danica's 3 kids and Warren's 2 boys. 5 cousins who looked forward to beach week as much as Lydia did. Unless Marla pushed the thought away and went to start dinner. Sometimes families had money problems. Sometimes plans fell through. It didn't have to mean anything more than that, but the cold feeling in her chest didn't go away 2 days later. Marla stood in the break room at the clinic, stirring sugar into her coffee and trying to focus on the afternoon schedule. 3 checkups, a vaccination appointment, and a surgery that would run late if the dog turned out to be as aggressive as his owner claimed. Her phone sat on the counter next to her lunch, screen dark and silent. She'd been fighting the urge to call her mother back, to ask more questions about the beach trip cancellation. The practical part of her mind said to let it go. Plans changed, money got tight, things happened. The other part, the part that remembered 20 years of family gatherings where she felt like an outsider, whispered that something wasn't right. "Marla." Jessica poked her head into the break room. Mrs. Patterson's here early with her cat. Want me to put them in room 2? Yeah, thanks. I'll be right there. Marla drained her coffee and headed for the examination room, pushing thoughts of her family aside. Work was simple. Animals didn't lie or play favorites. They either felt sick or they didn't, and fixing them required skill and attention. Not politics at Mrs. Patterson's cat had an ear infection, easily treated with antibiotics and cleaning solution. Marla explained the medication schedule while the orange tabby tried to escape from the examination table, and Mrs. Patterson nodded along, asking intelligent questions about dosage and side effects. How's Lydia doing? Mrs. Patterson asked as she wrestled the cat into his carrier. She's been so excited about her art in class lately. She's good. Looking forward to summer vacation. I bet. Kids always love their summer adventures. My grandkids are going to camp this year. First time away from home. Marla smiled and nodded, but something twisted in her stomach. Summer adventures. Like beach trips with grandparents who claimed they couldn't afford them. After Mrs. Patterson left, Marla found herself staring at her phone again. Danica lived 20 minutes away, close enough to their parents' house that she probably knew all about their financial situation. Close enough to know whether the beach trip was really canceled for everyone. She scrolled through her contacts and found her sister's number, then hesitated. Danica had 3 kids under 12 and a husband who traveled for work. She stayed busy with PTA meetings and soccer practice and all the activities that came with being the perfect suburban mother. Calling her felt like admitting something was wrong, like she couldn't handle her own family problems. But Lydia's disappointed face kept floating through her mind, the careful way her daughter had accepted the news without complaint. 9 years old and already learning to expect less than her cousins got. Marla hit the call button before she could change her mind. Marla? Hey, how are you? I was just thinking about you. Danica's voice sounded rushed, distracted, probably driving between activities or managing some small crisis with the kids. I'm fine. Just wanted to check in about this summer. Mom said they had to cancel the beach trip. Cancel? What do you mean cancel? The twist in Marla's stomach tightened. She called Tuesday morning. Said they couldn't afford it this year. Too many expenses. Silence on the other end of the line, broken by the sound of children arguing in the background. Danica! I'm here. I'm just confused. We just confirmed our dates last week. Mom's been talking about which restaurants to try this year. What dates? For the beach house. July 15th through 22nd. Same as always. The break room walls seemed to close in around Marla. She sat down heavily in the plastic chair next to the microwave, phone pressed tight against her ear. So the trip isn't canceled. No, it's not canceled. Why would Mom tell you that? Marla's mind went blank, then filled with a rushing sound like static. Her mother had lied. Not a misunderstanding. Not a confusion about dates or money. A deliberate lie, delivered in that sweet voice that made it sound like disappointment was inevitable. Marla, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. Maybe there was some kind of mix-up? I could call Mom and ask. No. The word came out sharper than Marla intended. Don't call her. I'll figure it out. Are you sure? Because if there's some kind of problem. There's no problem. I just got confused about the dates. Another lie, but easier than explaining that her parents had excluded Lydia from the family vacation and then lied about it. Easier than admitting that at 36 years old, she was still the daughter they could dismiss without a second thought. Okay, well, the kids are really excited. Tommy's been practicing his swimming every day. That's great. I should go. I have an appointment. Sure. Love you. Love you too. Marla ended the call and sat in the break room silence, staring at her phone's black screen. 7 grandchildren total. 6 of them would spend a week at the beach, building sandcastles and collecting shells and making memories that would last their whole lives. One of them would stay home, accepting disappointment with the grace of a child who'd learned not to expect too much. The static in her head got louder, drowning out the sounds of the clinic around her. She thought of Lydia's careful drawings of seashells, the countdown calendar on her bedroom wall, the quiet way she'd said, "Maybe we can go to the lake instead." Her daughter deserved better than being forgotten, better than being lied to by people who claimed to love her. Marla stood up and smoothed her scrubs, checking her watch. 2 more hours until she could go home. 2 more hours to figure out how to tell Lydia that her grandparents were liars, and that some people in your family would hurt you just because they could dot, or maybe she wouldn't tell her at all. Maybe she'd protect her daughter from the truth for a little while longer. Let her believe that disappointment was about money instead of malice. Either way, things had changed. The cold feeling in her chest had turned into something harder, sharper, something that felt like clarity. Her parents had made their choice. Now she'd make hers. Marla made it through 5 days before the evidence found her. She'd been checking Facebook before bed, scrolling through the usual mix of work friends, vacation photos, and high school classmates' political rants. A mindless habit that helped her brain unwind after long days at the clinic. Danica's name appeared at the top of her feed with a fresh post from 3 hours ago. Beach photo, multiple images. Marla almost scrolled past it, but something made her stop and click. The first image showed 3 children building an elaborate sandcastle, their faces bright with concentration and joy. Danica's oldest son Tommy in the center, Warren's boys on either side. All 3 of them tan and grinning, wet sand clinging to their hands and knees. The second image was a group shot. All 5 cousins lined up on the beach, arms around each other's shoulders. Behind them, the ocean stretched blue and endless under a perfect summer sky. The third image made Marla's breath catch in her throat. Harold and Claudine Keaton sat in beach chairs under a striped umbrella, wearing matching sun hats and relaxed smiles. Her father held a paperback novel. Her mother sipped from a plastic cup with a tiny umbrella in it. They looked exactly like grandparents enjoying a perfect vacation with their family. Every grandchild was there. Every single one except Lydia. Marla's hand shook as she scrolled through the album. 12 photos total, documenting the first day of what was obviously a planned, organized, fully funded beach vacation. The same beach house they'd rented for years, the same activities, the same traditions, the same lie about not being able to afford it. She checked the timestamp. Posted at 9:15 p.m., which meant they'd been at the beach all day while she was at home helping Lydia with her summer reading assignment. The caption read, "Day 1 at the beach with our amazing grandkids. So grateful for family time and making memories. Hashtag blessed, hashtag family first, hashtag beach week 2024 inch." Marla stared at the words until they blurred together. Family first, blessed, making memories, with 5 grandchildren instead of 6. She set the phone down on her nightstand and walked to the bathroom, legs unsteady. In the mirror, her face looked pale and hollow, like someone had carved out her insides and left only the shell behind. They hadn't forgotten about Lydia. They hadn't run into unexpected expenses or scheduling conflicts. They had deliberately planned a vacation without her daughter and then lied about it to avoid having to explain why. Marla gripped the edge of the sink and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way she'd learned during labor when pain threatened to overwhelm her ability to think. This was worse than pain. This was the careful, calculated exclusion of a 9-year-old child whose only crime was being her daughter instead of Danica's or Warren's. Down the hall, Lydia slept peacefully in her twin bed, surrounded by art supplies and library books and the countdown calendar she'd crossed off religiously until the beach trip got canceled. Tomorrow she'd wake up and eat cereal and work on her summer reading while her cousins played in the surf, and she'd never know that her grandparents had chosen to exclude her from their definition of family. Marla walked back to her bedroom and picked up her phone. The photos were still there, bright and cheerful and devastating. She could comment on the post ask pointed questions about expenses and cancellations. She could call her mother right now and demand an explanation, but what would be the point? They'd already shown her exactly where Lydia stood in their priorities. Words wouldn't change that. Confrontation wouldn't make them love her daughter the way they loved their other grandchildren. Instead, Marla screenshotted each photo and saved them to her phone. Evidence of their choice, documentation of their lie. She'd need them later, when memory tried to soften the edges of this moment. Then she turned off the phone and lay down in the dark, staring at the ceiling while rage and heartbreak took turns hollowing out her chest. Her parents had excluded Lydia from their family vacation and then lied about it to her face. They thought they could get away with it because she'd always been the one who swallowed disappointment quietly, who accepted their excuses and moved on without making trouble. They were wrong. Marla closed her eyes and let the fury settle into something colder, more useful. Planning, strategy, the careful consideration of consequences. They'd made their choice about Lydia. Now she'd make her choice about them, and she'd make sure they understood exactly what they'd lost. Marla waited until Monday afternoon to drive to her parents' house. The beach photos had been online for 4 days, accumulating likes and cheerful comments from relatives and family friends. So cute, and what a wonderful family, and making precious memories. Not one person had asked where Lydia was. The drive to her childhood neighborhood took 12 minutes through tree-lined streets where nothing ever seemed to change. Same mailboxes, same front yard gardens, same sense of quiet respectability that her parents had worked decades to achieve. She parked in their driveway behind her father's sedan and sat for a moment, hand steady on the steering wheel. No shaking now, no tears. Just cold clarity about what needed to happen next. The front door opened before she reached it. Claudine Keaton stood in the doorway wearing a floral blouse and white capri pants, her hair freshly styled from her weekly salon appointment. She looked rested, relaxed, like someone who'd just returned from a pleasant vacation. "Marla, what a lovely surprise. Come in, come in. Your father's in his chair reading the paper." Marla stepped into the familiar living room with its beige carpet and carefully arranged furniture. Family photos covered the mantelpiece and side tables, documenting years of holidays and graduations and grandchildren's milestones. Plenty of pictures of Lydia when she was younger, fewer from recent years. "Would you like some iced tea? I just made a fresh pitcher." "No, thanks." Marla settled onto the couch across from her father's recliner. Harold looked up from his newspaper with the mild surprise of someone whose routine had been interrupted. "Hello, sweetheart. How's work treating you?" "Fine." Marla kept her voice level, conversational. "How was your weekend?" "Oh, quiet. Did some yard work, watched a little television." Her father folded his newspaper and set it on the side table. "Your mother's been working in her flower beds." Marla nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Sounds relaxing." Claudine settled into her own chair, hands folded in her lap with the satisfied air of someone who'd managed her household well. "How's our sweet Lydia? Is she enjoying her summer break?" "She's doing fine. Reading a lot, working on her art. She's been asking about the beach trip." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Her parents exchanged a quick glance, the kind of wordless communication that came from 40 years of marriage. "Oh, honey, we explained about that. The expenses this year, the repairs we need to make." Marla pulled out her phone and opened Facebook, navigating to Danica's post with slow deliberation. She held up the screen so both her parents could see the beach photos clearly. "These expenses." Claudine's face went pale. Harold cleared his throat and looked away, suddenly fascinated by a spot on the carpet. "Marla, sweetheart, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Marla's voice stayed calm, matter of fact. "You took 5 grandchildren on vacation and left one at home. Then you lied about it." "It's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple." Marla put her phone away and leaned forward slightly. What I don't understand is why. Another glance between her parents. Claudine twisted her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit Marla remembered from childhood arguments. Sweetheart, she's different from the other children. She's so quiet, so sensitive. The others play rough. They're loud and energetic. We thought she might not enjoy. Stop. The word came out sharper than Marla intended, cutting through her mother's excuses like a blade. Don't lie to me again. Harold shifted in his chair, finally meeting his daughter's eyes. We didn't want any drama, Marla. The other kids have been looking forward to this trip all year. We thought it would be easier if... Easier for who? For everyone. Lydia's just so different. She doesn't fit in with the group the way the others do. The words hung in the air between them, like smoke from a house fire. Marla felt something fundamental shift inside her chest, a door slamming shut that would never open again. Different how? Claudine leaned forward, her voice taking on the pleading tone she used when she wanted sympathy. You know how she is, honey. She doesn't run around and play games like the others. She sits by herself drawing or reading. The cousins try to include her, but she never really joins in. So you decided she didn't deserve a vacation. That's not what we decided. We just thought. You thought it would be easier to exclude my daughter than to make sure she felt included. Harold rubbed his forehead, looking tired and annoyed. She would have been miserable, Marla. She would have spent the whole week sitting on the sidelines while the other kids had fun. Did you ask her what she wanted? We know what's best for our grandchildren. All of them? Or just the 5 you actually consider family? The accusation hit its target. Claudine's eyes filled with tears, the practiced response she'd used for decades to deflect uncomfortable conversations. That's not fair. We love Lydia. No, you don't. Marla stood up, suddenly tired of sitting in their careful living room pretending this was a normal family discussion. You love the idea of her when it's convenient. You love her when she's not in the way. Marla, please. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. She walked to the mantelpiece and picked up a framed photo from last Christmas. 7 grandchildren arranged around the tree, all of them smiling at the camera. Lydia sat slightly apart from the group, but she was there, included in the frame. The last time, apparently. You made a choice about my daughter. Now I'm making a choice about you. She set the photo down and headed for the door. Behind her, she heard her mother's voice rise in panic. Marla, wait. Let's talk about this. We can work something out for next year. There won't be a next year. Don't be dramatic. Your family. No. Marla stopped at the doorway and turned back to face them both. Family doesn't do what you did. Family doesn't exclude a child and then lie about it. She's our granddaughter, too, Harold said, his voice carrying the authority he'd always used to end arguments when she was young. Then you should have acted like it. Marla walked out of their house and closed the door behind her, cutting off the sound of her mother's voice calling her name. She got in her car and sat for a moment, letting the afternoon heat build up around her. They'd shown their true feelings about Lydia, and she'd shown them hers about their family. No yelling, no tears, no dramatic gestures. Just the truth, spoken plainly and without room for misunderstanding. She started the engine and backed out of their driveway, watching their house shrink in the rearview mirror. They could keep their perfect family photos and their careful respectability. She and Lydia would build something better. 3 weeks later, Marla stood in the toy aisle at Target with a shopping cart full of birthday presents. Danica's youngest son was turning 7, and the family party would be at her parents' house on Saturday afternoon. Under normal circumstances, Marla would have bought one nice gift and called it done. Today, she was buying 7 presents total, 1 for each grandchild who would be at the party. Well, 6 grandchildren, plus 1 for the birthday boy. She selected a Lego set for Tommy, art supplies for Warren's older son, books for each of the younger kids. Quality gifts, the kind that showed thought and care. The kind that would be noticed and appreciated and remembered. The cart was getting full. Good. At the checkout counter. The teenage cashier looked impressed by the quantity of presents. Someone's having a big birthday party. Something like that. The total came to $312, more than Marla usually spent on gifts in a year. She handed over her credit card without hesitation. Sometimes making a point required an investment. Saturday afternoon arrived, bright and sunny. Perfect weather for a backyard birthday party. Marla dressed Lydia in her favorite sundress and braided her hair with extra care, knowing they'd be the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. "Are you sure we have enough presents?" Lydia asked as they loaded the wrapped gifts into the car. "That's a lot of boxes." "I'm sure. Everyone deserves to feel special at a party." The drive to her parents' house felt different this time. No anxiety, no worry about saying the right thing or avoiding conflict. Just calm purpose and a clear plan. Cars lined the driveway and street. Warren's truck, Danica's SUV, various relatives and family friends arriving for the celebration. Through the living room window, Marla could see children running around the backyard while adults clustered on the patio with plates of food and plastic cups. Normal family gathering. Normal except for the careful choreography that had excluded her daughter from their last celebration together. "Marla!" Danica appeared at the front door with a bright smile and arms open for a hug. "I'm so glad you came. Mom wasn't sure if you'd make it. Wouldn't miss it. Where should I put these?" Danica's eyes widened as she took in the stack of wrapped presents in Marla's arms. "Wow, you went all out." The gift tables in the living room. Marla carried the presents inside, Lydia following behind with her own armload. The living room buzzed with conversation as relatives admired the decorations and caught up with each other. "Marla, honey." Claudine appeared at her elbow, wearing a flowered dress and a kind of forced smile that meant she was nervous. "How wonderful that you're here. And Lydia, don't you look pretty?" "Thanks, Grandma." Marla began arranging the presents on the designated table, making sure each child's name was clearly visible on their gift. Tommy's Lego set front and center, surrounded by the books and art supplies and toys she'd selected for his cousins. "Goodness, that's a lot of presents," Harold commented from his position near the sliding door. "You didn't need to go overboard. I wanted every child to have something special." She finished arranging the gifts and stepped back to admire her work. 7 wrapped packages, each one labeled with care, each one representing hours of thought about what would make that particular child happy. Every child except the birthday boy's grandmother. "Where are Harold and Claudine's presents?" Warren asked, appearing beside the table with a beer in his hand. "Did they already give them to Tommy?" "I'm sure they have something special planned," Marla said, her voice carrying just enough volume to be heard by the adults. Nearby to Claudine's smile flickered. "Of course we do. We haven't wrapped them yet." "Oh." Warren looked confused. "That's not like you, Mom. You usually have everything organized weeks in advance." "We've been busy. House projects, you know how it is." The same excuse they'd used about the beach trip. Marla watched her mother's face carefully, noting the way her eyes darted around the room, looking for escape routes. "House projects." Danica joined the conversation, balancing a paper plate loaded with potato salad and barbecue. "What kind of projects?" "Just maintenance things, gutters and such." "Didn't you just get new gutters 2 years ago?" Another flicker in Claudine's smile. "Well, there's always something that needs fixing." The conversation was attracting attention from other relatives now, drawn by the note of confusion in Danica's voice. Aunt Betty, Uncle Jim, several family friends who'd known Harold and Claudine for decades. "That's strange," Betty commented. "You two are usually so prepared for everything." Harold cleared his throat loudly. "Why don't we get the kids organized for cake? Tommy's been asking about it all afternoon." A transparent attempt to change the subject, but effective. The adults began herding children toward the patio where a superhero-themed cake waited on the picnic table. Marla hung back as the crowd moved outside, watching her parents' careful orchestration of the distraction. They'd managed this time, but cracks were starting to show in their perfect family facade. Good. During the cake ceremony, she stood slightly apart from the group, with Lydia beside her. Her daughter seemed to sense the undercurrents of tension, but didn't ask questions, content to watch her young cousin blow out candles and make wishes. After cake came present opening, the traditional chaos of ripped wrapping paper and excited children. Tommy opened his Lego set with appropriate enthusiasm, then moved on to the gifts from his cousins. Each child received their carefully chosen present with genuine delight, passing the items around so everyone could admire them. "These are amazing gifts," Warren said, examining the art kit Marla had bought for his older son. "You really went all out." "I believe in celebrating family." Another loaded comment, delivered with perfect innocence. Across the patio, Claudine's face had gone tight with stress. The party continued for another hour, children playing with their new toys while adults lingered over coffee and dessert. Normal family interactions, normal conversations about work and weather and vacation plans. But Marla noticed the way conversations died when her parents approached groups of relatives. Noticed the questioning looks when people realized Harold and Claudine hadn't given their grandson any presents. Noticed the whispered conversations that stopped when she got too close, seeds of doubt planted carefully and left to grow as the party wound down. She helped clean up without being asked, stacking plates and gathering discarded wrapping paper, playing the role of the helpful daughter, the responsible family member who could be counted on. "Thank you for coming," Danica said as they loaded the last of the dishes into the dishwasher. "And for those incredible gifts. You really didn't have to do so much." "I wanted to. Every child deserves to feel special." Mom and Dad seemed a little off today. "Did something happen?" Marla paused in wiping down the counter, considering her response. "I think they're just tired. Planning family events can be exhausting." "Yeah, that makes sense. The beach trip probably wore them out." "Probably." She finished cleaning and went to collect Lydia, who was showing her younger cousin how to draw horses with her new art supplies. Sweet children, all of them, innocent of their grandparents' favoritism and manipulation. "Time to go, baby." "Already? But I was teaching Katie how to draw mayonnaise." "We can continue the lesson next time." Lydia hugged her cousins goodbye and collected her things with the practiced efficiency of a child used to transitions. They walked to the car together while the party continued on the patio behind them. "Did you have fun?" Marla asked as they buckled their seatbelts. "Yeah, Katie's really good at art. She just needs someone to show her different techniques." "You're a good teacher." They drove home in comfortable silence, leaving behind a family gathering where questions had been raised and perfect facades had started to crack. Not dramatic, not obvious, but noticeable to anyone paying attention. Harold and Claudine had excluded Lydia from their beach vacation without consequences. Now they were learning that consequences could be delivered quietly, persistently, and with surgical precision. Marla parked in their driveway and looked back at the house where her parents were probably fielding uncomfortable questions about missing presents and house projects that didn't quite make sense. This was just the beginning. The phone started ringing on Sunday morning while Marla was making pancakes. Claudine's name appeared on the screen, followed immediately by a text message. "Please call me back. We need to talk." Marla turned off the stove and poured orange juice for Lydia, who was reading at the kitchen table with the focused concentration she brought to everything she enjoyed. "Mom, are you going to answer that?" "Not right now. Breakfast first." The phone rang again 20 minutes later while they were washing dishes. Then again while Lydia was in the shower. By the fourth call, Marla was impressed by her mother's persistence, if not her timing. She waited until Lydia was settled in the living room with her art supplies before returning the call. Marla, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all morning. I know. What do you need? We need to talk about yesterday. About the party. What about it? Claudine's voice carried the strained patience of someone trying very hard not to lose her temper. You know exactly what about it. Those presents, the things you said. People are asking questions. What kind of questions? About why we didn't have gifts for Tommy. About our expenses and house projects. Betty called this morning, wanting to know if we're having money problems. Marla settled into her desk chair and opened her laptop, half listening to her mother's complaints while she checked her work email. What did you tell her? I told her everything was fine, but she didn't seem convinced. And Jim mentioned something about favoritism, which is completely ridiculous. Is it? Of course it is. We love all our grandchildren equally. Then why wasn't Lydia at the beach with them? Silence on the other end of the line. Marla could hear her father's voice in the background, though she couldn't make out the words. Your father wants to talk to you. Put him on. Harold's voice came through the phone with the authoritative tone he'd used when she was a teenager breaking curfew. Marla, this has gone far enough. Your mother's upset, the family's asking questions, and we need to put this behind us. Put what behind us? This attitude you've developed. This need to cause problems at family gatherings. Marla stopped typing and gave the conversation her full attention. I brought presents for the children and helped clean up. Which part of that was problematic? You know what you were doing. Making your mother look bad. Creating drama where none existed. I didn't create the drama, Dad. I just stopped pretending it wasn't there. Your mother explained about the beach trip. We made a difficult decision based on what we thought was best for everyone, including Lydia. Especially Lydia. She would have been miserable. She would have been included. There's a difference. Harold's patience was clearly wearing thin. Fine. You want to punish us for making a parenting decision you disagree with. How long are you planning to keep this up? The question hung in the air while Marla considered her answer. How long? Until they understood what they'd done. Until they apologized. Until they treated Lydia with the same love they showed their other grandchildren. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just done pretending that what you did was okay. So what does that mean exactly? It means I won't be attending family gatherings where Lydia isn't welcome. It means I won't make excuses for your behavior anymore. It means you don't get to have it both ways. Have what both ways? You don't get to exclude my daughter when it's convenient and then expect us to show up and play happy family when you need us. Another pause. Are you saying you won't come to family events anymore? I'm saying we'll come to events where all 7 grandchildren are equally welcome. If that's not the case, you'll have to explain our absence to the family. This is ridiculous. You're being completely unreasonable. Am I? You lied to my daughter about why she couldn't go on vacation with her cousins. You made her believe it was about money when it was really about not wanting her there. And now you're angry because I won't pretend that was okay. Harold's voice rose slightly. We're her grandparents. We have the right to make decisions about family activities. And I'm her mother. I have the right to protect her from people who hurt her. We would never hurt Lydia. You already did. The words came out quiet and final. Marla ended the call and set her phone aside, returning to her email with hands that barely shook at all. From the living room came the sound of Lydia humming while she worked on her art project, completely absorbed in creating something beautiful. Her daughter was learning to find joy in her own company, in activities that didn't require other people's approval or inclusion. Maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. The rest of Sunday passed quietly. Lydia worked on a watercolor painting of birds, while Marla caught up on laundry and housework. Normal domestic routine, peaceful and unhurried. Around dinner time, her phone buzzed with a text from Warren. Mom said you're boycotting family events? That seems extreme. Marla stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Not boycotting. Just not attending events where Lydia isn't welcome. What do you mean isn't welcome? She's always welcome. Ask Mom and Dad about the beach trip. What about it? Instead of explaining, Marla forwarded one of the beach photos from Danica's Facebook post. The one with all 5 cousins lined up on the sand. Grinning at the camera, Warren's response took several minutes. Oh, shit. I didn't realize. Now you do. I had no idea they didn't invite her. I thought she was sick or something. They told me they couldn't afford to take anyone. Then they took everyone except Lydia. Wow. That's really messed up. Yeah. Another long pause. What are you going to do about it? I already did it. We won't be attending family gatherings where she's not included. But that's going to cause a lot of problems. Mom's already upset. And now people are asking questions. Marla read his message twice, feeling a familiar disappointment settle in her chest. Even when Warren understood what their parents had done, his first concern was family harmony, not his niece's feelings. Let me know when you figure out whose side you're on, she typed back. She didn't respond to his next 3 messages. Monday morning brought another call from her mother, which Marla let go to voicemail. Then a text from Danica, asking if they could meet for coffee and talk through the situation like adults. Marla deleted the text without responding. She was done talking, done explaining, done trying to make people understand why excluding a child from family activities was wrong. They either got it or they didn't. And the people who didn't get it weren't people she needed in her life or Lydia's at work. Dr. Rodriguez noticed her improved mood during their morning surgery prep. You seem lighter today. Good weekend. Clarifying weekend. Sometimes you have to stop hoping people will change and just accept who they really are. Sounds like wisdom to me. It did feel like wisdom, or at least like relief. For years, she'd bent herself into uncomfortable shapes, trying to fit into her family's idea of normal. Swallowing small hurts, making excuses for their favorites, accepting less than her daughter deserved, and Omort, if Harold and Claudine wanted to explain to the extended family why their youngest granddaughter never attended gatherings anymore. That was their choice to make and their problem to solve. Marla had better things to do with her time. You look like someone who needs to talk. Tasha Williams appeared in the clinic break room doorway with 2 cups of coffee and the no-nonsense expression she wore when dealing with difficult patients at the hospital. Marla looked up from her lunch, a sad desk salad she'd been picking at for 10 minutes, and managed a tired smile. That obvious. Honey, I've been a nurse for 15 years. I can spot family drama from 3 rooms away. Tasha settled into the chair across from her and pushed one of the coffee cups in her direction. What's going on? Tasha was one of the few people Marla trusted completely. They'd met 3 years ago when Tasha brought her daughter's rabbit to the clinic for an emergency surgery and had bonded over single motherhood and the particular challenges of raising daughters without much family support. My parents excluded Lydia from their annual beach trip with all the grandkids, then lied about why. Excluded her how? Marla pulled out her phone and showed Tasha the Facebook photos, watching her friend's expression shift from confusion to anger to disgust. Oh, hell no. Tasha handed the phone back with more force than necessary. They took everyone except your baby and then posted about it online. They told me they couldn't afford to take anyone this year. House expenses. And you believed them. I wanted to believe them until Danica told me the trip was still on, and then I saw the pictures. Tasha shook her head slowly, the way she did when dealing with particularly stupid people. So what did you do about it? Marla explained about the confrontation at her parents' house, the birthday party presents, the phone calls, and family pressure to work things out. Good, Tasha said when she finished. What's your next move? My next move? Honey, this isn't over. People like your parents don't just accept consequences and change their behavior. They're going to keep pushing, keep trying to make you the problem instead of accepting that they're the ones who messed up. Marla hadn't thought beyond refusing to attend family events. The idea that she needed a longer-term strategy hadn't occurred to her. What would you do? I'd make it clear that this isn't negotiable. No meetings to work things out, no compromises, no chances for them to manipulate the situation. They made their choice about Lydia. Now they live with the consequences. The family thinks I'm overreacting. Of course they do. It's easier to blame you for causing problems than to admit your parents are playing favorites with their grandchildren. Tasha leaned forward, her voice taking on the intensity she used when giving medical instructions. Listen to me carefully. You don't fight liars with explanations. You don't fight manipulators with logic. You fight them with boundaries and distance. Distance. Complete distance. No family events, no holiday visits, no Sunday dinners. No opportunities for them to hurt Lydia again or make you feel like you're the one being unreasonable. The idea was both terrifying and liberating. Complete separation from the family she'd spent 36 years trying to please. What about Lydia? She'll miss her cousins. She'll miss the idea of having grandparents who love her equally too. But you can't protect her from reality forever. And the reality is that your parents don't treat her the same way they treat the other kids. Tasha was right, and Marla knew it. The beach trip wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the most obvious example of a pattern that had been building for years. The missed dance recitals because they were watching Warren's soccer games. The Christmas presents that were noticeably less expensive than her cousins. The way conversations stopped when Lydia tried to join them, as if a 9-year-old had nothing interesting to contribute. How do I explain that to a 9-year-old? You tell her the truth. That some people and families don't know how to love equally, and that it's not her fault or her responsibility to fix them. Marla's phone buzzed with another text message. Danica again, asking about coffee plans and finding a solution that works for everyone. She showed the message to Tasha, who rolled her eyes. Let me guess. She wants to meet somewhere neutral so you can talk things through and figure out how to make this all go away without your parents having to actually change anything. Probably. Don't do it. The minute you sit down for a reasonable discussion, you're back to being the one who has to compromise. You're back to making excuses for their behavior. Marla deleted the message without responding. Sometimes I think it would be easier to just go back to the way things were. Easier for who? For you? Or for Lydia, who gets to grow up knowing her grandparents consider her less important than her cousins? The question hit hard because Marla already knew the answer. It would be easier for her to swallow the hurt and pretend everything was fine. But it wouldn't be easier for Lydia, who deserved better than being treated as an afterthought by the people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. You're right. I'm always right. It's my most annoying quality. Tasha grinned and stood up, gathering her empty coffee cup. How's Lydia handling all this? She doesn't know about the beach photos yet. She thinks the trip really was canceled for everyone. You planning to tell her? I don't know. Part of me wants to protect her from knowing how cruel they were. And the other part thinks she has a right to know who these people really are. Tasha paused at the break room door. There's no rush to decide. But when you do tell her, and I think you will make sure she understands that their treatment of her says everything about them and nothing about her. After Tasha left, Marla sat alone with her half-eaten salad and cold coffee, thinking about truth and protection and the difference between sheltering your child and lying to them. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Lydia's teacher, Mr. Calloway. Saw Lydia's summer art portfolio today. Exceptional work. She has real talent. Marla smiled for the first time all day and typed back, "Thank you. She loves your class. Would you have time for a brief conference this week? I'd like to discuss some opportunities for her." They arranged to meet Wednesday afternoon, after school let out. Something to look forward to, Something positive in the middle of all this family chaos. Lydia had people who saw her value, who encouraged her gifts, who wanted to help her succeed. Maybe those people weren't her grandparents, but they were real and they were present and they were choosing to invest in her future. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was better than enough. Wednesday afternoon found Marla sitting in Mr. Calloway's classroom, surrounded by student artwork and the familiar smell of crayons and construction paper. Lydia's paintings covered one entire bulletin board, a collection of landscapes and portraits that showed remarkable skill for a 9-year-old. "She's gifted," Mr. Calloway said without preamble. "Not just talented, genuinely gifted. Her understanding of color and composition is well beyond her age level. She's always loved to draw. It's more than that. Look at this one." He pointed to a watercolor painting of birds in flight, the colors blending and flowing in ways that seemed almost accidental but created perfect harmony. She painted this in 20 minutes during free time. No planning, no sketching, just pure instinct. Marla studied her daughter's work with new eyes, seeing not just pretty pictures, but evidence of a real artistic vision. What does that mean for her education? It means she needs more than I can give her in a regular classroom. There's a youth art program at the university that takes students starting at age 10. Summer intensives, weekend workshops, mentorship opportunities. That sounds expensive. Some of it is, but there are scholarships, and the investment would be worth it. Lydia has the kind of raw talent that could take her anywhere she wants to go. Mr. Calloway pulled out a folder full of information about art programs, scholarship applications, and portfolio requirements. "I'd like to nominate her for the State Youth Arts Competition. Winners get full scholarships to summer programs." She'd want that. She'd love it. Lydia thrives when she's challenged, when she's around other kids who understand what it means to see the world differently. Kids who see the world differently, like Lydia did, with her quiet observations and careful attention to detail, like she always had, even when her family treated that difference as a flaw instead of a gift. "What do I need to do?" Mr. Calloway handed her the folder with a smile. "Just say yes. I'll handle the application process, but I need your permission to submit her work." Yes. The word came out without hesitation. Absolutely yes. They spent another 20 minutes going through the materials, discussing timelines and requirements, and the kinds of opportunities that might open up for a child with Lydia's abilities. When Marla left the school that afternoon, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Her parents might not value Lydia's quiet nature and artistic gifts, but other people did. Important people, people who could help her daughter build a future based on her talents instead of other people's expectations. A tea home. She found Lydia in the kitchen, working on homework at the table, pencil moving in careful strokes across a math worksheet. "How was school today?" "Good. Mr. Calloway said he wanted to talk to you about something." "He did talk to me. He thinks you're exceptionally talented at art." Lydia looked up with bright eyes. "Really? Really? He wants to enter some of your paintings in a state competition." "What kind of competition?" Marla sat down across from her daughter and explained about the youth arts program, the scholarships, the summer intensives where Lydia could work with professional artists and other talented kids. "That sounds amazing," Lydia said when she finished. "When would it be?" "This summer, if you win the competition." "What if I don't win?" "Then we'll find other ways to help you develop your talent. Winning isn't the only path forward." Lydia nodded solemnly, already understanding at 9 that life didn't always work out the way you hoped. But that didn't mean you stopped trying. "Can I keep working on my portfolio tonight?" "After homework. I'm almost done." Lydia returned to her math problems with renewed focus, as if solving fractions was just another step toward her artistic future. Marla watched her daughter work and felt something settle in her chest that might have been peace. Lydia had goals now, opportunities, people who believed in her potential. She had a path forward that didn't depend on her grandparents' approval or her cousin's acceptance. She had people who chose to see her value instead of her difference. And maybe that was the most important lesson Marla could teach her, that family wasn't just about blood relations and shared DNA. Family was about the people who showed up, who invested in your dreams, who made space for you exactly as you were. Lydia was building that kind of family already. Even if she didn't realize it yet, November arrived with the first real cold snap of the season, and with it came Claudine's annual phone call about Thanksgiving dinner arrangements. Marla, honey, I know we haven't talked much lately, but I wanted to invite you and Lydia for Thanksgiving. The whole family will be there. Marla paused in folding laundry. A basket of Lydia's art smocks balanced on her hip. Through the living room window, she could see her daughter raking leaves in their small backyard, attacking the job with the methodical determination she brought to everything she cared about. That's kind of you, Mom, but we already have plans. Plans? What kind of plans? We're going to the mountains for the weekend. I booked a cabin. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Marla wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, her mother's voice came back, tight with controlled frustration. The mountains? For Thanksgiving? But it's a family holiday, Marla. I know what it is. Then you know how important it is for the grandchildren to be together. Danica is making her sweet potato casserole, and Warren's bringing his boys early so they can help with decorations. All the grandchildren. The phrase hung in the air between them, loaded with the assumption that Lydia would naturally be included in that count despite everything that had happened over the summer. Sounds like you'll have plenty of family there. But we won't have you and Lydia. That's not right. Marla set down the laundry basket and walked to the kitchen, where Lydia's latest painting was taped to the refrigerator, a landscape of mountains and trees that somehow captured both the wildness of nature and the peace of solitude. We'll be fine, Mom. Enjoy your dinner. Marla, please. I know you're still upset about the beach situation, but can't we put that behind us? For the sake of the family. The sake of which family? The one that includes all 7 grandchildren, or the one that only counts 6? Another long pause. I don't understand why you're being so stubborn about this. We explained our reasoning. You lied to my daughter and then posted pictures of the vacation she wasn't invited to. There's nothing to explain. We were trying to avoid hurt feelings. Whose hurt feelings? Not Lydia's, obviously. Claudine's voice took on the pleading tone she used when she wanted sympathy instead of accountability. We made a mistake, sweetheart. Can't you forgive us? Can't we move past this? Moving past it would require you to understand what you did wrong. Do you? We should have been more clear about our reasoning. That's not what you did wrong. Then what? What do you want me to say? The question revealed everything Marla needed to know. Her mother still didn't understand that excluding Lydia had been cruel and inexcusable. She thought this was about communication problems or hurt feelings that could be smoothed over with apologies and time. I want you to understand that you broke my daughter's trust and mine. I want you to understand that families don't work the way you think they do. Of course, families work. No, Mom. Family means everyone gets included, even when it's inconvenient. Even when one child is quieter than the others or different in ways that make you uncomfortable. Especially then. We love Lydia. You love the idea of her when it doesn't interfere with your preferences. Marla ended the call before her mother could respond, then turned off the phone entirely. Outside, Lydia had moved on from raking to jumping in the pile of leaves she'd created, her laughter carrying through the glass like music. Her daughter was learning to make her own joy, to find happiness in simple pleasures that didn't require other people's approval. Maybe that was a better lesson than learning to accept crumbs from people who should have offered her the whole meal. The mountain cabin was everything Marla had hoped for when she booked it. Small and cozy, with a stone fireplace and picture windows that looked out over rolling hills covered in autumn colors. The kind of place where you could breathe deeply and remember that the world was bigger than family drama and wounded feelings. Lydia had brought her art supplies and spent Thursday morning painting the view from the front porch, while Marla read a novel she'd been meaning to finish for months. Peaceful, unhurried time that felt like luxury after the tension of the past few months. "Mom, look." Lydia held up her latest creation, a watercolor that captured the soft light filtering through the trees with remarkable accuracy. "I think I'm getting better at shadows." "You definitely are. Mr. Calloway was right about your talent." They'd received word the week before that Lydia had been accepted into the state youth arts competition. The portfolio Mr. Calloway had submitted on her behalf had impressed the judges enough to earn her a spot in the spring intensive program, with a full scholarship covering tuition and supplies. "Do you think the other kids in the program will be nice?" "I think they'll be kids who understand what it's like to see the world the way you do. Artists tend to appreciate each other's differences." Lydia nodded and returned to her painting, adding delicate touches of color that brought the whole composition to life. She'd grown more confident in her artistic choices over the past few months, more willing to trust her instincts and take creative risks. Around noon, Marla started preparing their Thanksgiving dinner. Nothing elaborate roasted chicken instead of turkey. Simple sides that wouldn't overwhelm the small kitchen. The kind of meal that prioritized comfort over tradition. "Are you sad we're not with the family today?" Lydia asked as she helped set the table. Marla considered the question carefully. "Are you sad we're not there?" "A little. I miss my cousins sometimes." "That's normal. It's okay to miss people even when being around them isn't good for you." "Is that why we don't see Grandma and Grandpa anymore?" "Because being around them isn't good for us." The question Marla had been dreading and expecting in equal measure. Lydia was too smart and too observant to not notice the pattern of missed family events and declined invitations. "What do you think?" "I think they don't like me very much. They always seem happier when they're talking to my cousins." The quiet observation hit Marla like a physical blow. Her daughter had been aware of the favoritism all along, had been watching and processing her grandparents' different treatment without complaint. "That's not about you, baby. That's about them not knowing how to appreciate the kind of person you are." "Because I'm different." "Because you're special in ways they don't understand. Some people only know how to love what's familiar to them." Lydia nodded thoughtfully, arranging silverware with the same careful attention she brought to her art. "Like how some people only like certain colors, even when other colors are just as pretty?" "Exactly like that." They ate their simple Thanksgiving dinner while the afternoon light faded outside the cabin windows, talking about art and books and the kinds of adventures they might take together in the future. No mention of family obligations or guilt about missing traditional gatherings. After dinner, Marla posted a single photo to Facebook. Lydia painting by the fireplace, completely absorbed in her work, surrounded by the peaceful atmosphere of their mountain retreat. The caption read, "Grateful for quiet moments and creative spirits." #thankful #mountains #art. Within an hour, the post had accumulated dozens of likes and comments from friends and colleagues. "Beautiful," and "what a talented young lady," and "looks like the perfect Thanksgiving." No comments from her family, but Marla hadn't expected any. They were probably still gathered around her mother's dining room table, maintaining the appearance of perfect family harmony while carefully not mentioning the two missing place settings. Let them explain her absence however they wanted. Let them make excuses or assign blame or pretend it didn't matter. She and Lydia were building something better. The call came at 7:30 on a Tuesday morning in December, jerking Marla awake from deep sleep. Danica's name on the phone screen, which meant either a family emergency or another attempt to orchestrate a reconciliation. "Marla? Thank God you answered. Dad's in the hospital." "Emergency, then." Marla sat up in bed, instantly alert. "What happened?" "Stroke. Mom found him this morning when he didn't come down for breakfast. He was conscious when the paramedics got there, but he's in intensive care now." "How bad?" "They don't know yet. The doctors are running tests." "Can you come?" The question hung in the air while Marla's mind processed the information. Harold in the hospital, Claudine scared and overwhelmed. The family rallying together in crisis the way families were supposed to do, the way they should have rallied around Lydia when she needed them. Which hospital? Mission. Room 314 in the ICU. Mom's been here all night. She's exhausted. I'll be there as soon as I can. Marla ended the call and stared at her phone for a long moment, feeling the familiar tug of old obligations and family loyalty. Her father was sick, possibly seriously. Her mother needed support. Under normal circumstances, she'd be dressed and driving to the hospital within minutes. But these weren't normal circumstances. She got up and made coffee, then called her supervisor at the clinic to explain that she might need to leave early depending on family developments. Professional, responsible, taking care of her actual obligations before making decisions about moral ones. By 8 o'clock, Lydia was awake and eating breakfast, while Marla explained about Grandpa's stroke. Is he going to be okay? I don't know yet. The doctors are still figuring that out. Are we going to the hospital? Another loaded question. Marla looked at her daughter's concerned face and felt the weight of months of careful boundary setting colliding with genuine family crisis. Do you want to go? I think so. Even if he doesn't like me very much, he's still my grandpa. The simple honesty of it broke something loose in Marla's chest. Lydia's capacity for compassion, even toward people who'd hurt her, was humbling and painful in equal measure. Get dressed. We'll go after I finish work. The ICU at Mission Hospital buzzed with the controlled chaos of serious medical care. Marla and Lydia made their way to room 314, past nurses and machines and the antiseptic smell that reminded Marla of her workplace. Through the doorway, she could see Harold lying in the hospital bed, looking smaller and frilier than she'd ever seen him. Tubes and wires connected him to various monitors, and his face had the gray pallor of someone whose body had betrayed him without warning. Claudine sat in the bedside chair holding his hand, still wearing the clothes she'd put on the morning before. Warren stood near the window, talking quietly with Danica, their voices low and serious. Family gathering around crisis, just like they were supposed to. Marla stepped into the room with Lydia beside her, and the conversation stopped. All eyes turned toward them with expressions ranging from relief to surprise to something that might have been guilt. Marla. Claudine stood up on unsteady legs and moved toward them. I'm so glad you came. And Lydia, sweetheart, you didn't have to. How is he? Marla's voice cut through her mother's emotional rambling, focusing on practical information instead of dramatic reunions. Stable, Warren answered. They think it was a minor stroke. Some weakness on his left side, some difficulty with speech. But the doctors are optimistic about recovery. That's good news. Marla moved to the bedside and looked down at her father, noting the way his left hand lay motionless against the blanket while his right hand tracked their conversation with restless movements. Dad, can you hear me? Harold's eyes opened and focused on her with effort. His mouth moved, trying to form words that came out slurred but recognizable. La, I'm here. His gaze shifted to Lydia, who stood slightly behind her mother with the careful stillness she used in unfamiliar situations. Lydia. Hi, Grandpa. Lydia's voice was soft but clear. I hope you feel better soon. Harold's eyes filled with tears, though whether from the medication or emotion or simple physical strain was impossible to tell. He tried to speak again, but the effort exhausted him and his eyes drifted closed. The doctor said he needs rest, Danica explained. The next few days will give us a better idea of how much function he'll recover. Marla nodded and stepped back from the bed, her duty as a daughter fulfilled. She'd come. She'd seen him. She'd brought Lydia to say goodbye or hello or whatever this moment was supposed to be. I should get Lydia home. School night. Wait. Claudine's voice carried a note of panic. You just got here. Can't you stay a little longer? There's nothing for us to do here. He needs medical care, not visitors. But we need. Claudine's composure finally cracked, and tears spilled down her cheeks. I need my family here. I need my daughter. The words that should have tugged at Marla's heartstrings 6 months ago felt hollow now, manipulative in their timing and transparency. You have Warren and Danica. You'll be fine. But you're my daughter too. You're supposed to be here. I was supposed to be a lot of places. Turns out being family isn't automatic. Marla took Lydia's hand and headed for the door, leaving behind the sound of her mother's quiet crying and the weight of expectations she no longer felt obligated to meet. In the elevator. Lydia was quiet until they reached the parking garage. Mom, are you okay? I'm fine, baby. How are you? Sad about Grandpa, but not surprised that we're leaving. Why aren't you surprised? Because they made us feel like we weren't really part of the family. So when something bad happens, we don't have to act like we are. The 9-year-old clarity of it was devastating and perfect. Lydia understood cause and effect in ways that her grandmother apparently didn't. Are you okay with that? I think so. It makes me sad, but it also makes sense. They drove home through the December darkness while Marla processed what had just happened. She'd done her duty, shown up for a family crisis, brought her daughter to see her grandfather despite everything that had passed between them. But she hadn't stayed to provide comfort or support or to pretend that Harold's illness erased the summer's betrayal. She'd acknowledged the crisis without accepting responsibility for fixing it. Her phone buzzed with text messages all evening. Warren asking if she was planning to visit again. Danica wanting to coordinate care schedules. Claudine's rambling messages about family obligations and forgiveness and the importance of being together during difficult times. Marla read them all and responded to none. If they wanted to discuss family obligations, they could start with the obligation to treat all grandchildren equally. If they wanted to talk about forgiveness, they could start by asking for it instead of demanding it. If they wanted to understand why she'd left the hospital after 20 minutes, they could examine their own behavior over the past year and draw their own conclusions. She turned off her phone and helped Lydia with her homework, then spent the evening reading while her daughter worked on a new painting. Normal domestic routine, peaceful and unforced. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, covering the world in clean white silence. Harold came home from the hospital the week before Christmas, walking with a cane and slurring his words, but determined to regain his independence. The family rallied around his recovery with the kind of coordinated care that would have been admirable under different circumstances. Marla heard about it through Warren's updates, which arrived via text every few days whether she responded or not. Physical therapy appointments, speech therapy sessions, modifications to the house to accommodate his limitations. She didn't visit, didn't offer to help with care coordination or meal preparation or any of the dozen small tasks that families shared during medical crises. The absence was noted, commented upon, criticized. People are asking where you are, Warren texted after Harold's first week home. I don't know what to tell them. Tell them the truth, Marla replied, that I'm taking care of my own family. But Dad is your family too. He made his choices about family. Now I'm making mine. The conversation ended there, but similar ones followed with other relatives, friends of the family, people who remembered her as the responsible daughter who could always be counted on to do the right thing. What they didn't understand was that she was doing the right thing. The right thing for Lydia, who deserved better than begging for scraps of affection from people who'd proven they considered her dispensable. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright, with snow covering the mountains visible from their living room window. Marla and Lydia exchanged presents by their small tree, then spent the day working on art projects and reading new books, peaceful, unhurried. No family drama or forced cheerfulness or awkward gift exchanges, where favorites were obvious and inequality was disguised as generosity. Around noon, Lydia looked up from her new sketchbook with a thoughtful expression. Do you think Grandma and Grandpa are sad that we're not there today? Probably. But being sad about consequences doesn't erase the choices that created them. Do you think they miss me? The question Marla had been dreading, delivered with the matter-of-fact tone Lydia used when she needed honest answers to difficult problems. I think they miss the idea of you being there, but I don't think they miss accommodating who you actually are. What's the difference? Missing someone means wishing you could see them and spend time with them and include them in your life. Missing the idea of someone means wishing they would change into the person you want them to be. Lydia nodded slowly, processing the distinction with the same careful attention she brought to mixing colors for a painting. I think I understand, like how I used to miss having grandparents who loved me the same as my cousins. But what I really missed was the idea of grandparents like that. Exactly. So when I stopped expecting them to be different, I stopped missing something that was never really there. The wisdom of it took Marla's breath away. Her 9-year-old daughter had figured out something that had taken her 36 years to understand, that you could only miss what you'd actually had, not what you'd hoped for. How do you feel about that? Relieved, mostly. It's easier when you stop hoping for things that aren't going to happen. They spent the rest of Christmas Day in comfortable companionship, creating art and reading stories and making memories that belonged entirely to them. No obligation, no performance, no careful navigation of other people's expectations. That evening, Marla posted another Facebook photo. Lydia's painting of their Christmas morning, complete with snow outside the window and presents under the tree. The colors were warm and peaceful, capturing the contentment of a holiday celebrated without stress or compromise. The caption read, "Merry Christmas from our house to yours. Grateful for quiet joy and creative moments." Hashtag Christmas, hashtag art, hashtag peace. The likes and comments poured in from friends, colleagues, teachers, and other parents who appreciated the genuine happiness radiating from both the image and the message, and comments from her immediate family, but several from extended relatives who'd been asking questions since Thanksgiving. Aunt Betty, beautiful painting. Lydia is so talented. Hope you're both doing well. Uncle Jim, Merry Christmas, girls. Love seeing Lydia's artwork. She's really gifted. Cousin Rebecca, gorgeous. Your Christmas looks perfectly peaceful. People were noticing, not just her absence from family gatherings, but the obvious contentment she and Lydia had found in their smaller, chosen family unit. Her phone buzzed with a text from Warren around dinner time. Mom asked me to tell you Merry Christmas. She misses you both. Marla stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Tell her we hope Dad continues to recover well." No returned sentiment, no acknowledgement of missing them in return. Just polite wishes for someone else's health and well-being. The distinction was important. She could hope for Harold's recovery without missing the man who'd helped exclude her daughter from family vacations. She could care about his well-being without accepting his version of family loyalty. Christmas night brought another snowfall, heavier this time, covering their small yard in pristine white. Marla stood at the kitchen window, watching the flakes drift down in the porch light while Lydia practiced piano in the living room. Their house felt complete. Their life felt intentional. Their choices felt right in ways that years of family obligation and compromise never had. Somewhere across town, her parents were probably dealing with the aftermath of a crowded Christmas Day, dishes to wash, presents to organize, grandchildren sugared up and overstimulated from too much excitement. They'd managed their perfect family Christmas without her and Lydia, and she'd managed a perfect Christmas without them. Both truths could exist simultaneously, without conflict or regret. Spring came, early that year, bringing with it news that Lydia had won second place in the state youth arts competition. The recognition came with a full scholarship to the summer intensive program and an invitation to display her work in the state capitol building. "I can't believe it," Lydia said, staring at the official letter with wide eyes. "They really think my painting is that good." The judges know talent when they see it. Marla hugged her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and feeling pride swell in her chest like a physical force. "Can we go look at the other winners' work? I want to see what they painted." "Of course. We'll make a special trip to the capital." They spent the weekend planning their congratulations trip, mapping out museums and galleries they could visit while they were in the city. Art-focused adventures that celebrated Lydia's achievement without requiring anyone else's approval or participation. Monday morning brought a phone call from Mr. Calloway with more good news. A representative from the intensive program wants to meet Lydia next week. They're considering offering her a full scholarship for their high school pre-college track when she gets older. High school? She's only 9. Exceptionally gifted students sometimes benefit from accelerated programs. Nothing to decide now, but it's worth exploring when the time comes. After the call ended, Marla sat in her kitchen, processing the magnitude of what was happening. Lydia's talent was opening doors that led to opportunities Marla had never imagined. Scholarships, mentorship, artistic development that could shape her daughter's entire future. All of it happening without input or involvement from the grandparents who deemed her too different to include in family vacations. Their loss was becoming more apparent every day that Marla's phone buzzed with a text from Danica. "Heard about Lydia's art award through the grapevine. That's amazing. Mom and Dad would be so proud if they knew." The conditional nature of their pride said everything about why they'd been excluded from the celebration. They would be proud if they knew, but they didn't know because their relationship with Lydia had been severed by their own choices. "Thanks," Marla typed back. "She's worked very hard. Maybe this could be a good opportunity to reconnect? Mom's been really struggling since Dad's stroke, and I think she realizes she made some mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "About the beach trip. About excluding Lydia. She knows it was wrong now." Marla stared at the message, feeling an old familiar tug toward reconciliation and family harmony. The part of her that had spent decades making excuses for her parents' behavior whispered that people could change, that crises sometimes created clarity, that maybe it was time to give them another chance. But Lydia deserved better than grandparents who only recognized their mistakes when the consequences became embarrassing. "Realizing something was wrong isn't the same as understanding why it was wrong," she typed back. "What do you mean?" "I mean they excluded my daughter and then lied about it. If they want to reconnect, they need to understand why that was unforgivable. Maybe if you explained." "No, I'm done explaining. Either they understand that all grandchildren deserve equal treatment, or they don't. Either way, it's not my job to teach them how to be decent human beings." The conversation ended there, but Marla knew it wouldn't be the last attempt at orchestrated reconciliation. Extended family would continue pressuring her to work things out and think about the children and forgive and forget, because that was easier than acknowledging that some behaviors were inexcusable. She didn't care what was easier for them. She cared about what was better for Lydia. The trip to see Lydia's painting displayed in the state capitol exceeded all expectations. Her watercolor hung in a place of honor among the other competition winners, with a small plaque identifying her as the youngest artist in the exhibition. "Look, Mom." Lydia stood in front of her displayed work with wonder in her voice. "It looks so official." "It is official. You're an officially recognized young artist now." They spent hours in the gallery, studying the other paintings and discussing technique and artistic choices. Lydia asked thoughtful questions about color theory and composition, already thinking like a serious artist despite her age. Other visitors stopped to admire her work and read her artist's statement. A local newspaper photographer asked permission to take her picture standing next to her painting. "What's your next project?" he asked as he adjusted his camera settings. "I'm starting the summer intensive program next month. I want to learn more about landscape painting. Any family members here to celebrate with you today?" Lydia glanced at Marla, who nodded encouragingly. "My mom's here. She's the one who helps me with everything. Just the two of you. We're enough." The simple confidence in her daughter's voice brought tears to Marla's eyes. Lydia had learned to value the relationships that supported her growth instead of mourning the ones that didn't. They drove home that evening with Lydia chattering about everything she'd seen and learned, already planning her next series of paintings. Excited about her future, confident in her abilities, surrounded by people who celebrated her achievements, IT was enough. More than enough? IT was everything. The next morning, Marla woke to find a Facebook message from her mother. Saw the newspaper article about Lydia's art award. She looks so grown up and accomplished. I'm proud of her. Private message instead of public comment. Pride expressed in secret instead of celebration shared with the world. Even now, even when Lydia was succeeding beyond their wildest imagination, Claudine couldn't bring herself to publicly acknowledge her granddaughter's achievements. Marla deleted the message without responding that Lydia's success belonged to her and the people who'd supported her journey. It didn't belong to grandparents who'd proven they couldn't be trusted with her heart. Some bridges, once burned, were meant to stay that way, and some families were better off without the members who'd never learned how to love unconditionally. The pattern was clear. Lydia's achievements accumulated like evidence of everything her grandparents had missed. Art awards, academic recognition, acceptance into advanced programs that most children could only dream of accessing. Each success highlighted the magnitude of their mistake in excluding her, and each celebration they missed made their absence more obvious to the extended family. People are starting to ask questions, Warren reported during one of his periodic check-in calls, about why you and Lydia are never at family events anymore. What kind of questions? About whether there was some kind of fight. About why Mom and Dad never mention Lydia when they talk about their grandchildren. And what do you tell them? I tell them it's complicated. It's not complicated. They excluded my daughter from a family vacation and then lied about why. I decided we were done accepting that kind of treatment. But it's been almost a year, Marla. Don't you think it's time to let it go? The question revealed how little Warren understood about what had actually happened. He thought this was about holding grudges instead of protecting her daughter from people who'd proven they couldn't be trusted. Let what go? The fact that they think Lydia matters less than her cousins? The fact that they lied to her face about why she couldn't go to the beach? They made a mistake. They made a choice. There's a difference. Warren's sigh carried through the phone line. What would it take for you to forgive them? I can't forgive something they don't understand was wrong. Mom knows it was wrong. She's told me she regrets how she handled the beach trip. Regret isn't the same as understanding. If she understood what she did wrong, she'd be working to rebuild trust with Lydia instead of complaining about how I'm making the family look bad. How do you know she's not trying to rebuild trust? Because she sent me a private message about Lydia's art award instead of posting public congratulations. Because she talks about missing us instead of acknowledging why we're not there. Because she wants reconciliation without accountability. The conversation ended with Warren promising to think about what you said, but Marla knew nothing would change. Her family had chosen their comfort over her daughter's well-being, and they'd continue making that choice as long as she let them. She was done letting them that afternoon. She and Lydia drove to the lake for an impromptu picnic, spreading a blanket on the grass while Lydia set up her easel to paint the water and distant mountains. I love coming here, Lydia said as she mixed colors on her palette. It's so peaceful. Me too. Sometimes the best family time happens when it's just family who chooses to be together. Are we a family? Just the two of us? We're the most important kind of family, the kind that shows up for each other no matter what. Lydia nodded and returned to her painting, adding delicate strokes that captured the afternoon light on the water. Around them, other families spread picnic blankets and launched kayaks and played frisbee with their children. All different configurations of what family could look like when it was built on choice instead of obligation. Marla leaned back on the blanket and watched her daughter work, feeling the deep satisfaction that came from making decisions based on love instead of guilt. They'd built something good together. something that didn't require anyone else's permission or participation to be complete. And in the end, that was better than any family vacation could have been. 1 year later, Marla stood in the parking lot of Lydia's new art school, watching her daughter say goodbye to her summer intensive classmates with the easy confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she was. "See you in the fall program." Lydia called to a boy her age who'd become her closest friend during the 6-week session. "Don't forget to practice your perspective drawings." The transformation was remarkable. Gone was the quiet child who sat on the sidelines while cousins played, replaced by a young artist who organized group projects and shared techniques and made friends based on common interests rather than family obligation. "Ready to go home?" Marla asked as Lydia hefted her portfolio bag over her shoulder. "Ready. I want to show you the painting I finished today." They drove home through summer afternoon traffic while Lydia described her final project, a landscape series that had impressed even the program's most demanding instructor. Her voice bubbled with excitement about fall classes and spring exhibitions and the possibility of attending art high school in a few years. "Ms. Rodriguez thinks I should apply for the scholarship program at the State University when I turn 14. She says my portfolio is already stronger than some college applicants." "That's incredible, baby. I'm proud of how hard you've worked. I couldn't have done it without you. You're the one who signed me up for everything and drove me to classes and bought all my supplies." The simple gratitude in her daughter's voice brought tears to Marla's eyes. Lydia understood that family meant showing up, investing time and effort and resources in each other's dreams. She'd learned that lesson from having it demonstrated, not from being told it was important. Home. They spread Lydia's latest paintings across the dining room table like a gallery exhibition. Each piece showed technical improvement and artistic growth that would have been impossible without the intensive program. "These are professional quality," Marla said, studying a portrait that captured both photographic accuracy and emotional depth. "You're not just talented anymore. You're skilled." "The difference is practice and good teachers," Lydia replied with a matter-of-fact tone she used when discussing technical subjects. "Talent helps, but it's not enough by itself." Another lesson learned through experience rather than lecture. Hard work mattered more than natural ability. Support systems made the difference between potential and achievement. Lydia had built both through her own efforts and the opportunities Marla had helped her access as they arranged the paintings in chronological order. Marla's phone buzzed with a text from Danica. Saw the article about Lydia's scholarship in the paper. "Amazing achievement. The kids are asking when they'll see her again. The annual attempt at reconnection. Time to coincide with Lydia's latest success." Marla read the message and felt nothing, no anger, no hurt, no temptation to respond with explanations or accusations. Just mild curiosity about whether her sister genuinely thought newspaper articles were adequate substitutes for actual family relationships. "Mom, are you okay?" Marla looked up to find Lydia watching her with the perceptive gaze she'd inherited from both parents. "I'm fine, just distracted by work stuff." "Okay, can we get pizza for dinner? To celebrate finishing the program." "Absolutely. Any place you want." They ordered from Lydia's favorite restaurant and ate on the back porch while the evening light faded, talking about art and friends and plans for the remainder of summer vacation. Normal family conversation between two people who'd chosen each other over and over again. Despite outside pressure and family disapproval, and the easier path of accepting less than they deserved. After dinner, Lydia settled into her art corner to work on a new project, while Marla caught up on email. Peaceful domestic routine that had become their life by design rather than default. Around bedtime, she helped Lydia hang her latest favorite painting in her bedroom, a self-portrait that showed remarkable technical skill and emotional honesty. "I look confident in this one," Lydia observed, stepping back to admire her work. "Like I know who I am." "You do know who you are. That's what makes it a good self-portrait." "Do you think I'll keep knowing as I get older?" Sometimes adults seem confused about who they are. Marla considered the question seriously. I think you'll keep knowing as long as you keep making choices based on what's true for you instead of what other people expect. Is that what you did? When you decided we didn't have to go to family things anymore? Yes. I decided your well-being mattered more than their comfort. And you're not sad about missing them. I'm sad about what we thought we had but never really did. I'm not sad about protecting you from people who couldn't love you the way you deserved. Lydia nodded and climbed into bed, already thinking about tomorrow's art projects and next week's activities, moving forward instead of looking backward, the way children do when they feel secure in their present circumstances. Marla kissed her goodnight and turned off the light, leaving behind a daughter who'd learned to value herself based on her own achievements rather than other people's approval, i.e. in her own room. She found a missed call from her mother and several text messages that followed the same pattern as always. Expressions of missing them, complaints about family harmony, requests for reconciliation that avoided mentioning accountability. She deleted them without reading past the first few words. Some relationships were worth fighting for. Others were worth fighting against. The wisdom was in knowing the difference and acting accordingly. Regardless of what other people thought you should do, Marla had fought for Lydia's right to be valued equally within their family. When that fight proved impossible to win, she'd fought against the people who insisted on treating her daughter as less important than her cousins. Both kinds of fighting had required courage, but the second kind had required more. It was harder to walk away from family than to keep trying to fix them. But sometimes walking away was the most loving thing you could do. For yourself, and for the people who depended on you to protect them from harm. Marla turned off her phone and settled into bed, listening to the sounds of their quiet house and feeling the deep satisfaction that came from choices made with clear purpose. Outside, summer rain began to fall, washing the world clean for whatever came next. They were ready for whatever that might be. Together,